Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. My name is Roei Livneh, and I'm a CEO and co-founder of Gingee Games. Gingee Games is a creator of a platform named Gameology, which is a cross-platform solution that works and behaves on any device. What we're going to do today is talk about technology and challenges, and this presentation is going to have 3 stages. The first stage is why go cross in the first place? It's not a very trivial question to ask, and you need to ask yourself, why go cross? I can go native. Second part, when I'm going cross, what should I anticipate? What the challenge is going to be like, what the problem is going to be like. And the third part is going to be me sharing some tips, insights about how to go cross with or without the platform. Okay? So let's get started. Why go cross? The first problem I find when not going cross, is that I need to pick my market. So it's live or die by picking my market. I can have a wonderful product who is going to be available in iTunes, in iPhone, for example, who is not going to be successful due to many problems, who is not related to my product. Why should I pick the market and not the market pick me? If I'm successful in Android, who cares as long as I'm successful? Okay, so live or die by picking my market where I'm publishing is a huge issue which we face as a game studio. The second part is more engagement. More engagement means that when I'm going with my game, I want to be everywhere because people tend to play everywhere. So when I'm at work, I would like to play on my PC or my Mac. While I'm on the train, for example, on my way home, I would like to play the same game on my mobile. When I'm at home, I like my iPad very much, so I want to play there. More engagement means more revenues. More engagement is very good for us as a game studio. And the last part is candies for everyone. We all love candies, yes? Candy Crush is a huge success which showed us the power of being cross. We all want a taste of that. Now, when discussed why, it's obvious why we need it. I want to put some misconception that there is out there in the market. And I hear it on the floor here as well. I spoke with people and I saw that. There is a true cross-platform and a cross-platform, and I want to explain the difference between them. So being cross is like knowing English in a sense, okay? I know English, so I can speak with a lot of people. But I cannot write a book in English just because I know English, yes? So it means, let's make it coding-wise, yes? Let's talk about coding. So the fact that code can run on a device doesn't mean that the product is going to run smoothly on the device. Therefore, we didn't succeed with going cross. When I'm going with cross who is not truly cross, I have time to market issues. I have multiple pipelines, which I don't want. I don't want to have multiple pipelines when I go in cross. I have multiple UIs, multiple resources, graphic resources. And if I manage to bypass all of them, the one thing I don't want to do is endless optimization. And by that, I mean making your code better and better and better so it will fit a certain device out there. There is a huge risk of going crazy on endless optimization, and I find a lot of studios having problems with that. So that's what we don't want. This is a very complicated looking graph, but honestly, it's very simplistic. And it's presenting going cross with native. And I'm going to explain why I think it's a bad path. So 2 assumptions we have here, 2 facts that we need to think about. The first one, let's decide that, for example, an iPhone is just a one device, yes? We don't have iPhone 5, iPhone 4, iPhone 4S, 3, etc., etc. It's just one device. So each one, Android, for example, is 40 devices, type of devices. It's just one here, presented in the graph. The second part I want you to remember always is the 11 months crisis. The 11 months crisis is something that a lot of studios face, even if they are very successful. And this crisis And we're going to start from the end. In this crisis, a lot of studios doesn't survive, even successful ones. And the reason being is we have 4 pipelines, 4 UIs, and we need to update them all at once and succeed in a very competitive markets. So this is only 4. In real life, there is plenty of these pipelines altogether, okay? So let's start from the beginning right now. So the first line is where you see here, it's the iPhone. Let's say I have a great team, very expertise, variety of people. They know their job. They did it for 5 years. It's not their first product. And in 4 months, we have a game published into the iPhone, environment, yeah? 2 months after that, the game is so successful, I decided I want to make an iPad version as well. So I'm getting a team, make my team bigger, a new pipeline, I have an iPad version. Now, after a while, I decided that it's time to update the product. Why? Simply because engagement is something that you need to keep and maintenance all the time, yeah? So you maintain your user base and make it bigger by updating your product. The update line is on the 7 months line. It's very thin, but you can see update at the top. Now, after I'm updating, I decided, wow, I'm getting very good reactions from the crowd. I want to make an Android version, a phone Android version. So again, I'm ignoring the fact that there is 40 devices. I said there is only one type of phone. It's called Android, and I'm making a version for it. I have expertise people, again, I got them there, new pipeline, more people into the company. After 4 months, I have a new phone, a new version for Android, which I publish. 2 months after that, again, tablet. What I'm showing you here is the 11 months crisis, which we discussed just in the beginning. After 11 months, I have 4 types of pipelines we need to publish simultaneously and update all of the product at the same time. Money-wise, we spend 4 times this amount to create just the same game and maintain our user base, which means it costs me more. Yeah. No one listened to me? Oh, sorry. That's great. So what we actually need, we discussed what the problems are, why go cross, what we need. We need a true cross-platform. We need one code to rule them all. Lord of the Rings is an amazing movie, but the concept is very simplistic. One code to rule them all, guys. We don't want to do our job twice. We want the same UI on any device with one resource graphical resources, assets. And we want the same performance on all the devices. In order to do the same performances, we need hardware access. And we need reasonable time to market. So it's like a dream plan, yeah? That's what we need. Now we're going to discuss a little bit about technology and what should I choose on my pipeline. And I don't care which language you choose, platform, as long as you ask yourself these 4 questions. The first question I will ask, and I'm ignoring the language part because it's up to you to decide. The first question I will ask is the most crucial one. Do I get hardware access? Is it possible to talk with the camera, with the memory, with the CPU, the GPU in the device throughout this language or / platform? If yes, I'm going further. If not, I'm stopping and I'm changing my technology right away. The second question I will ask myself is, this is a VM/browser. It means it runs on VM, virtual machine, or a browser. If it's a browser, does it run smoothly on mobile or not? The third question will be, is my game product going to be 2D/3D? If it's 3D, do I need OpenGL to make it run faster? I see a lot of misconception here. Some people use 3D platforms to create 2D games and the other way around. Black box or white box. So when I'm choosing a platform, is it black box or white box? And by that I mean, is it pluginable? Could I track the bug throughout the engine? Or should I need to contact the company and wait for their response in order to continue working? This is a very crucial question to ask. Black boxes has their pluses. But when you need to do plugins, you need added value. It costs money most of the times, or it's not possible. So you should check it. White boxes are free and open to everyone. So this is the 4 questions I will ask about technology. And when I finish asking the questions, I can choose my technology, and not the other way around. Hypes are something that we are familiar with in the industry, and people tend to jump on technology, not the other way around. So I'm going to share some of my tips for you guys about how to create a certain game for cross. And I'm going to start from the simple to the more complicated. Okay, so we talk about client. So I would use sprite sheets, which is not a big, it's very well known, everyone uses it, but some people still use vectors these days for mobile. Yeah, I'm sorry, I need to stack it. Sprite sheets. The second part, I will use the hardware in a GPU and CPU manner. And this is a very crucial point. People tend to do GPU only, or just CPU. The CPU can handle things very specifically and can be better from GPU in certain things, and the other way around. I will use both, if it's possible. Loaders. When I'm going cross, I need to think about the fact that I'm going to be available on social networks such as Facebook, for example, and I need loaders for resources. Loaders are very common in mobile as well, so I would incorporate them into the pipeline from the get-go. UI design. Avoid the edges of the screen. Guys, people tend to stick things on the edge of the screens, and it makes the product not flat and cannot basically shift throughout resolutions, and it's not very smart. The focal point of the eyes of the user is anyway on the game, which is in the center of the device anyway. Making things stuck to the corners doesn't mean it's more visible, the other way around. Input devices. When it comes to input devices, you should think about keyboard and mouse versus touch. So the UI should be incorporated, both of the touch of mobile versus the fact that we have hover and down, for example, in mouse. So mouse clicks are keyboard-oriented, yes, PCs, versus the mobile, which is touch. I should have all of them incorporated in one product. So the UI design should have that as well. Don't make things impossible for people to use just because it looks nice on just mobile, for example, or the other way around. These tips are more related to programming, and it's lessons that we basically bleeded throughout the years. And I'm talking about 10 years of game designing. We bleeded a lot because we did these mistakes, and this is something I would like you to share with you on Cross. So I would start with the unknown components. A friend of mine who used to have a huge studio created a game with huge budget. It was fantastic. We got a budget, and everything was fantastic. And then he realized he cannot access a certain device camera, and basically the project failed. So start with the unknown components, the things that you don't know how to solve them first, and then continue to the very well-known, which is easy. The second part, which is taken very lightly by programmers, I guess, from what I see, is the CPU. The CPU is the gold mine. It's the most valuable resources that you can use as a programmer. The CPU should be used very smartly and not abused. And if it comes to file size versus CPU, I will always go towards the file size. So make bigger file size and less CPU usage, okay? So vectors, for example, is a very good example of abusing the CPU sometimes. Parallel pipelines. When you create a game, time to market is the issue that you face from the get-go, okay? You need to make it as fast as possible, as pretty as possible, as most interesting as possible, but you don't have the time. Parallel pipelines allow you to do that faster. So what you need to do is plan ahead. Say, for example, I want to make a game. So what are the features I want to have in each of these buttons? What they're going to do without even start creating anything. So the programmer could work on the feature list while the designer can work on the visual. I even suggest sometimes to do a mock-ups and just get it rolling, okay? Mock-ups, squares, layout. Think in pixels and not, think in percentage and not in pixels. This is, as a game designer, this is a very well-known disease of mine. I was pixel perfect person. I liked everything in a certain way. And if it moved 1 pixel, it would drive me crazy. When it comes to cross, this is not the way to do that. You need to be floating, yeah, on different devices. Think about percentage. After years of using cross-platform solutions, I realized there is not much a difference. It's like 5% difference in looks in different devices. And the last point I want to stress is the future fragmentation is here to stay. And if someone tells you the other way around, he's lying. And by that I mean technologies divide and conquer and not join all of us in one universe most of the time. So when you plan your cross-platform, you should very much implement everything you could do for the future products, for the future. One good example would be, we worked with a huge studio in New York, and they started creating a game for iPhone 4S, and iPhone 5 came along. And no one predicted that the ratios would be that weird, yeah? It's like, so other studios who created a product and needed to be supported by iPhone 5 were basically having issues, huge issues. And it ended up, some people lost jobs, some studios closed, etc., etc. Think ahead that nothing is certain, ratios are not certain, resolutions are not certain, and make percentage-based, CPU-based decisions and not the other way around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roei. Thank you, Roei. So I think that last line, particularly that fragmentation is an inevitable line. I think it's something we can all take to heart, and not just in terms of cross-platform, but across the board.
Yeah.
And what I like about your approach here about thinking about one pipeline is that when I was back in the sort of Java days, the guys who are really good at this stuff had solved that problem in Java. They had to have all these same issues. You know, the first phones we launched with had a 30K jar size maximum. Tiny, tiny thing. Yeah. And yet they were having to find ways of making games that worked properly on each device. Now, I mean, from your experience, the way you're working at the moment, are you seeing the way people are solving this? Are they looking for the lowest common denominator that works everywhere? Or are they trying to find, I mean, you hinted otherwise, but how do you avoid just ending up with a bad game because you can only make the one product on the lowest capable device? How do you avoid that?
So what you do is basically relies more on mathematics, less on tangible things like resolutions, scales. Don't do that. It's not a solution that works. Scale can kill any CPU, while if you think about it, for example, if I take a small square and make it bigger, it's just a different image of the same square, yeah? It's just more space. And the CPU can handle as much bigger as possible in the screen. So I would use that. I would use more mathematics, more thinking about solutions that makes the CPU rest.
Sounds like you need to make sure your images are all powered to the 2 so they can scale without looking horrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a fairly normal thing to do. Has anyone got any questions? I mean, I have tons, because I always do, but anyone got any questions? I will chuck one at you. One of the things that I find very important is that each device seems to have its own mode of use. It has its own kind of structure and form factor. I think there's a reason why I have a big phone and a big iPad tablet, whereas my wife likes to have a small tablet and a small phone. I think that each one has not just about the size of our hands, but the times when we want to use those devices. That particular form factor fits that particular need at that particular time.
Yeah.
So what influence does that have on this kind of game design approach?
I have one insight, which, don't get me wrong, but I disagree with the notion of targeting each hardware by itself. I think there is four common factors for each of these phones. The OS, Android, iOS, Windows, and RIM, yeah? More or less. I don't know about RIM. Yeah, but it's there. So if you can access and talk with the OS in a proper manner, the OS is doing its work properly because they adapt themselves to 4D devices, yes? It's Google's problem to solve the 40 plus hardware modifications.
You say that, but I'm going to disagree back. And I've asked this of a number of people, in particular Tommy Palm from King.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he has that background anyway. But when you look at something like Candy Crush, they have different teams working on each iteration. And it takes an awful lot of work to make sure that the experience, the emotional feeling you get when you're using a 10-inch tablet with both hands or sat on a desk versus having it in your hand, on your phone, versus potentially if you see I'm using the wrong example here, but imagine it on a TV, you'd have a different context. In fact, a conversation we had earlier on today talked about the role of the TV and how then that opens out a different way of playing because we now have a shared room, a shared audience watching that same screen. So I think there is something in this. How would you deal with that? Would you stick by the idea that it's not needed?
Well, I would take it, the first stage was going to the OS and check how you can work with it.
Absolutely.
And the second stage would be making it the user experience optimized. In this regard, again, most of my solutions come from mathematical equations and stuff like that, but in the end, it's if it runs smooth, if the user feels the tension, and I would do that in input related. So if, for example, I'm using keyboards and mouse, it's a different experience than touching in any sense. So making sure that any component is available for any input device is very important. So Kinect, for example.
Kinect's a great example. I mean, I'm sure there's still a few TVs out there. I can imagine you could use that kind of technology in some of the Samsung TVs that have that interaction. Maybe. I seem to remember playing Angry Birds with my brother-in-law's got a Samsung smart TV which got camera controls. Fascinating experience. Very different. Very, very different experience. So, any more questions? Is it just me talking? So, yes, cool. Okay. On that note, thank you very much, Roei.
Thank you.
I think that was great.